This program will contain explicit and possibly unfunny language. Please like and share anyways. Hello, and welcome to the Mad Toker YouTube page. I am the Mad Toker, I suppose, if that's what you want to call me. And this is not a movie commentary. This is I'm calling Movie Thoughts. This is going to be the name of the podcast, but essentially it's just going to be on the same page and same podcast page as my movie commentaries. And yes, this is a podcast as well now. I'm up on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Podbean. That can be up in other ones if people request it, but I'm just seeing how it goes first before I apply to the other ones, because the other ones it's a little bit more of a hassle to get them up. But it's not a big deal, but if people want it, I'll definitely do it. But if I'm not seeing the people want them, then I'm not going to bother yet. I will get them up at some point, but I won't rush myself unless people are asking for it. Now, this week's movie podcast, or Movie Thoughts podcast, is about movies that never got made, but were probably going to be awesome if they did get made, or at least they had the right people involved that made you think that if they just gotten made, it could have been cool. Oh man, and I already wrote out a script and everything, but one of the movies I forgot about that almost got made was James Cameron and Ridley Scott doing an Aliens movie together in like the mid-2000s, like around 2004, 2005. I fucking forgot about that one. I'm not really sure why that one fell apart, but I think they couldn't get on the same page, and I think Fox owns Alien. I think they want to push forward with any Alien movie just to keep the franchise going. That's when they came out with Alien vs. Predator, so pretty much killed Ridley Scott and James Cameron's enthusiasm for the movie. Although Ridley Scott obviously came back and directed Prometheus and an Alien Covenant. We'll actually be talking a little bit about Ridley Scott in this podcast, actually. He's involved in two of the movies that are not getting made, and one of them's not the one I just brought up. So, sorry. We haven't even started yet, alright? Fuck. Oh. Fucking dry mouth for some reason. So, speaking of Ridley Scott, the first project I'll be talking about is one I think most people who love sci-fi would have loved to have, especially since the director did some of the biggest and best science fiction movies of all time. And he didn't direct a sci-fi movie for decades, though. He directed pretty much every other kind of movie. He even directed Thelma and Louise, so. But yeah, when he finally did do a science fiction movie again, it received lukewarm reviews, to say the least. And that director, of course, is Ridley Scott, who I was just talking about. And from what I've read, Hans Rudi Giger, I can't pronounce his name, but Giger, who did the art for the first Alien movie and essentially invented what xenomorphs would look like. He basically he created an iconic villain and monster that we all like kind of. Well, they're fucking terrifying. Let's just be honest. So, if you ever saw one of those in real life, you'd shit yourself. That's a fucking kidder. You all know him, right? But anyways, this Giger, he continued on, obviously doing doing art for other movies as well, like doing concept art and things for movies like Poltergeist and I think one of the Halloween movies. If I should have done my research a little better. I had it written down here, I'm sorry, but I cut some things out for editing. Because yes, I edit. Don't even fucking start. Yeah, anyway, he basically did create like one of the best movie monsters of all time. Then after Alien, he had kind of a hard time because he got hired a lot and got paid for most of his work, but he wasn't being credited for anything. And because they kept changing his design so much, and he's kind of falling out of love with the industry. But then he found out about this movie. I think it was called Dead Reckoning, but eventually The Train is what I'll just start referring it to as. But yeah, and he found out that Ridley Scott might be attached to direct it. So he's pretty excited seeing how Ridley Scott was great to work with before, and he saw Ridley Scott as a visionary director, so he was incredibly happy to be doing this movie again, hoping lightning would strike, twice for them. And he would get the respect he deserves too, because like I said, people pretty much haven't been using him properly. Oh man, I gotta have a drink here for a sec. Oh, and then they even got Jim Ules, I think his name is, to write the script, and he would later go on to write Fight Club. So I'm guessing he probably would have written a pretty good sci-fi movie, judging by the way Fight Club kind of went. It's kind of a trippy sci-fi movie in some ways. So yeah, that would have been nice. But yeah, he wrote a script that kind of had like a humanoid monster that roamed future New York City that had become overpopulated. And yeah, apparently it doesn't turn out that the guy is just some homeless guy possessed by PCP. It's just it's actually just an alien monster. And eventually, the movie does end with them killing the monster in a bum fight, but that's obviously they had to change that ending. Where am I now? So, next thing is Geiger. Obviously, he's excited to work with Ridley Scott again, and Geiger immediately starts making designs after a brief description from Scott. And he worked for over a year on the designs, but unfortunately for Geiger, Scott would leave the project. And I couldn't find out much of a way or reason except that Scott and the studio heads, they had creative differences, but I don't know, I think I'd take a chance on whatever Ridley Scott was laying down, but I'm also getting the feeling that he wasn't really into doing another science fiction movie, because Blade Runner came out a few years before and it was a big box office failure and critical failure at the time, which sounds crazy looking back now because it's obviously just such a classic film. But I mean, I guess the one we watch now probably isn't even the same one that came out in theaters, so it might be quite a different movie. I don't know. I only watched like the director's cut, I think. The first director's cut from like the 90s. I think that's the best one. I'm not sure, so leave it in the comments if you know which the best one is. But yeah, he basically, when Scott was out, and Geiger essentially wasted a year of his life creating drawings for a movie that would never get made, and eventually it would just go through development hell, just going through writer, director, And yeah, it just passed down for the years until the movie studio, Carliocchio, I can't remember. They're not around anymore anyway. They went bankrupt, and yeah, this movie basically is just never ever gonna get made. And I don't know. It kind of just sounded like an Alien ripoff anyway. Maybe that's why Ridley Scott was out of it. But I just know that Geiger, he eventually went on and got his some of the designs from the movie are used in that movie, Species, as it's called. And I remember watching that movie, and it's not a very good movie, but at the time the special effects were pretty creepy and good. But that's basically all it had going for it was sex and the special effects. But yeah, Geiger, he did the designs for Prometheus too, as well. And I mean, that movie, I don't know, obviously not a fan of it, but it looked amazing, and that was partly because of him. It sucks he passed away in 2014, I think. But he finally got recognized, which he should have from the beginning, really. And that's really that. I'll be talking about Ridley Scott again here, and he's number 4. Another movie you kind of got in the way of. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. Now the next movie. Hold on a sec. Okay, yes. The next movie is a Quentin Tarantino movie, and this shouldn't shock anyone, but he promises to make more movies all the time, but he never gets around to making. So he's very unreliable that way. This one seemed like it was actually probably going to get made at one point. I remember when it was seemed like a real possibility. But yeah, I guess it just time passed too quickly, and here we are. But yeah, the movie is The Vega Brothers. I don't know if I said that yet. And yeah, one of the reasons, like I said, there was a time limit on it, because this movie was supposed to be a prequel to the movie Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, where John Travolta and Michael Madsen played brothers, but obviously they weren't in either movie together. But they're the Vega Brothers, Vic and Vince Vega. But yeah, to make this movie, you really would have had to make it probably probably with around 2002 to 2005 before they're just both too old to play the fucking roles. And I mean, even by the time Pulp Fiction came out, they were no spring chickens to begin with, so you really were kind of on the clock. I mean, really, probably should have had it made before the 90s were over. But yeah. And yeah, the plot would have been, it would have revolved around when Vince, you remember when he was living in Europe and living in Amsterdam, and he got the Royale with cheese? That joke that was so awesome back in '94. And yeah, it would have had the brothers running club there from Marcellus Wallace. And yeah, Ving Rhames was even supposed to have a cameo as Marcellus Wallace. Oh, that's a fucking name there, eh? And yeah, he wouldn't be getting wouldn't have gotten much screen time, but yeah, it would have been nice to have him back and kind of just as like a nod to Pulp Fiction. But yeah, besides that, I doubt anyone from Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction would have been showing up. But yeah, it would have been an interesting film. But like I said, the actors got way too old. They even talked about a possible sequel where Madsen and Travolta would play the twins of the brothers that were dead, just so they could, explain why they've aged so much. But yeah, now I'm pretty sure they're even too old for that. Like, yeah, it just wouldn't be the same now. And I just think it'd be too silly now. Because when I first heard about the project back in the 90s when I was just a kid, it seemed like it'd be about the same serious level as Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, which obviously had their comedic moments, but you're able to take them seriously as movies. And I kind of feel as the years have gone on, and eventually this would be like a really fucking silly movie if they were to play the roles now. And I think Quentin Tarantino would go full Tarantino on it, if you know what I mean. Which is, you know what I mean. If you've ever watched any of his movies, he has certain quirks. And I think this just would have been too silly to make it now. And also, I don't think this generation's ready for John Travolta to make another comeback. It's been rough for 3 years with COVID and everything, so yeah, I just don't think John Travolta making a comeback is just good for anybody. So yeah, and yeah, I think maybe now it's just better left undone. And I need to start drinking tea before I do these. Now next is this kind of a weird one for me because this movie essentially became 3 other movies, and those 3 movies are 3 of the most popular movies of all time. But as someone who's watched a crap ton of the movies, I've actually never seen any of those films. But we'll get to that. Now, if you're a Steven Spielberg fan, you've probably heard of this movie. Night Skies, it was called. It's supposed to be a dark alien thriller based off an apparent real-life alien attack where a family was attacked by gremlin-like aliens. And Spielberg heard about this from UFOologist J. Allen Hynek, whom he'd worked with on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is another movie I've never watched, which is really weird. I have a big hole in Spielberg movies. Yeah, you're going to find that out here. I'm going to list some of them off. But I know Spielberg's done serious films like Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan. But most of his fantasy and sci-fi movies are pretty tame, and I would love to see him do something like more dark and menacing. Because I think he is a genius as a director. But this is where I have some serious holes in my film knowledge, because I've never watched Encounters of the Third Kind, Poltergeist, E.T., Gremlins, or Jurassic Park. And because of that, I don't look at these movies through a nostalgic lens that most people do. I know it's completely fucked up, and people are probably surprised, especially if you ever get to know me, you would realize pretty quick I've watched a lot of movies. But Poltergeist, E.T., and Gremlins were all the movies that basically came out of the concept of Dark Skies. And in Poltergeist, I don't know, I heard it's a pretty scary movie, but maybe Night Skies would have been pretty fucked up like that too. And also it was almost written by Lawrence Kasdan, but he was busy writing Empire Strikes Back at the time. And didn't have time, but it seems like he did have his priorities completely straight because Empire is still the best Star Wars film. And I'm glad Spielberg didn't fuck that up for everybody. Because Star Wars is very fragile and can be fucked up super easily. I think everyone knows that. Especially if you've seen the sequel trilogy, you know how easy it is to fuck Star Wars up. But that's not Spielberg's fault in any way, and that's not George Lucas's fault anymore either. Now, excuse me. This one, it didn't get made purely because of Spielberg. Like, it had nothing to do with the studio or anything. And originally, he was just supposed to be a producer, and at some point, he decided to direct the movie himself. But either way, when he was filming Raiders of the Lost Ark, he had gotten sick of action-heavy films and wanted to return to his roots and do a movie more like Close Encounters. You know, more positivity, less dangerous, which is weird when you think of Indiana Jones. It's action heavy, but it's like super fun action. It's not like deep psychological thriller that takes a toll on your physical and mental state. You know, it's a feel good fun movie, but I guess Spielberg is kind of a pussy apparently, and that's why Dark Skies became E.T. the extraterrestrial. And no offense, Mr. Spielberg. But I'm just saying, like, I don't see Indiana Jones as a dark film. But either way. Oh, man, another thing, too. The guy who did the special effects for another movie I haven't seen, American Werewolf in London. And even though I've never watched that movie, I did see the transformation scene and where he transformed into a werewolf. And it's brutal, and it looks amazing, even though it's like 40 years old now. But I guess he actually worked on this thing for a while, and he put like $70,000 of his own money in creating designs for the aliens for Dark Skies. And Spielberg and professional hanger-oner Kathleen Kennedy were amazed by what he brought in. So I'm actually very curious what that looks like. I might have to look that up after, because yeah, like I said, the American Werewolf in London, like the special effects look pretty amazing. Yeah, but for most of you, I'm sure you're pretty happy this movie never got made because you like the movie E.T. and Gremlins and Poltergeist, and movies I've never watched. But I tried to watch some of them as an adult, but I just couldn't get past the first 20 minutes, and I don't know. Yeah, just the magic is not working on me. So yeah, I would have rather had like the dark Spielberg movie that I probably would want to watch as an adult now. Yeah. And for my next one, and this is another Ridley Scott, I guess technically. He's kind of the reason it didn't get made though. So anyway, the movie is Alien 5. And I know I talked about Prometheus on my last podcast, and I've already talked about Ridley Scott on this one. But this movie was the movie that was almost made instead of Alien Covenant, because this was after Prometheus when they were talking about making this movie. And yeah, it's Neil Blomkamp's Alien 5. And I'm not familiar with this work, but I'm sure some of you know the movie District 9. Which apparently is very good. I've just never gotten around to watching it. Yeah, you're finding it. This podcast is pointing at a lot of movie holes I never realized I had. So I have a lot of movies to get to watch. Yeah, I have to watch. But yeah. Where the fuck am I? Oh yeah. And yeah, so at the start of the podcast I said how much I hated that Ridley Scott didn't make another sci-fi film in the 80s. But by the time Prometheus came out, it wasn't the fucking 80s anymore, and Ridley Scott made sure we knew that by turning the Alien franchise into a weird art film where people played space flutes with their fucking clone, and the main characters act like a bunch of dipshit morons who probably don't know how to wipe their own asses. And maybe they actually don't, depending on how future tech works. I don't know. You know, like when you look back on skills I don't have that my ancestors would have had, because I don't have to learn them in modern times. I don't know that everyone in the future has to learn to wipe their own ass, so I don't know how dumb these people are. But back on topic, Prometheus pissed a lot of people off, and the studios are beginning to think maybe a different Alien movie would be the right way to go, which I think they might have been right. I still haven't watched Alien Covenant yet, but I've heard different things about it. I'm not sure if I want to or not. But Anyways, Alien 5 would have ignored everything that came after James Cameron's Aliens movie, so basically only the good Alien movies would be considered canon, which would have been nice. And Sigourney Weaver was going to return as Ripley and Michael Biehn as Hicks. And anyone who's watched Aliens 3 knows that Hicks kind of got fucked over because he got killed at the start of the movie immediately. I don't even know if Michael Biehn was actually just in the movie or was just someone that kind of looked like him as a stand-in. But yeah, he was killed immediately, so I really want to see that movie get made. But unfortunately for Blomkamp, his last film, Chappie, which I haven't seen, was a huge critical and commercial failure. I hear it's really, really bad. And number 2, Ridley Scott really wanted to make a sequel to Prometheus. And 3, that's it, because there is no 3. There's no third thing. It was just those 2 things, and that's all it needed. Because, Ridley Scott got his own way. And he got to make another shitty alien art movie. Actually, it might be good, I don't know. I haven't watched it, like I said. Maybe I should watch it first. I talk a lot of trash about it, even though I've never watched it. And fuck, this is the last movie. Shit. Went through that really quickly. Because I'm reading from my notes, or at least trying to. Anyway, the last one. I didn't even know if I wanted to include this one, 'cause this one has like a lot of flags that may make it seem as though there's no way it could have been a good movie. But it was in the 90s and people were really starved for a comic book entertainment, so as long as this was like a passable superhero movie, it probably would have done okay. But the ironically titled Superman Lives is a movie I'm not sure I should even put on this list. There's some probably good aspects, but let's just go through and see all the problems and why it didn't get made. And off to a bad start. It was the first thing they had a script ready to go, and they let Kevin Smith and his tiny dick read it, and he says it's not very good and does rewrites. In his version, he has Lex Luthor, Doomsday, and Brainiac all in one movie. So that sets alarm bells off for me immediately because that's way too many villains. And they definitely fucked up having one of the most famous villains for killing Superman in the first Superman movie of a franchise. So not doing great, not off to a great start with me already. And for some reason, one of the producers, it was really important for him that Superman fights a giant robot spider for some reason. Like, he absolutely had to have that in the movie, and this movie didn't get made, but they actually put that in that movie Wild Wild West, which I've never watched because I heard it's terrible, but there's a giant spider they have to fight in that robot spider, and yeah, that's where that same producer pushed it onto that movie. For some reason, he really wanted to see that in the movie, so I hope he's happy that's out there for him. And the second thing was they didn't want Superman to be able to fly. And yeah, they wonder why these movies fail sometimes, but I mean, you have source material that you just don't want to use. People keep telling you, use the fucking source material, that's why you want to see the movie. But they're just not, they don't get it. But yeah, so Smith had, when he rewrote the script, he put in that Superman would lose his powers for the majority of the movie. The movie that Doomsday's in, so he can't even fight Doomsday. So I don't even know what the hell he'd be doing the whole time, I guess. Kind of like how that Judge Dredd movie went, where it's Sylvester Stallone's Judge Dredd, where he's Judge Dredd for like 15 minutes, and then the rest of the movie he doesn't have his Judge Dredd gear on. He basically is just in jail the whole movie. I don't know. That was a bad play. I've watched that movie and I liked it to start when he's Judge Dredd. I this is gonna be a great movie, and then that was it for Judge Dredd in this. Yeah. Yeah, eventually they cast everyone's first choice to play Superman, Nicolas Cage, who, under normal circumstances, I do love. But this raised an eyebrow or two for me, you know? And he just doesn't look like Superman in any way, shape, or form. Even with a wig, hello. Every time I see him wearing a wig, they never put it far enough on his head to cover up his hairline completely. Like, I don't know why they do that, but anyways. I don't, yeah, like, but one good thing for him is they agreed to pay him $20 million, whether the movie got made or not. And Tim Burton got the same deal, but obviously for less money. But yeah, like, so they came out pretty much on top. Tim Burton got paid $5 million for doing nothing. But another thing is Cage had an idea that he played Clark as a straight up alien, like he just recently landed on Earth, even though he grew up on Earth. And judging from his acting choices in the past, I'm almost certain I would really want to see this, but also I'm really scared of what that would be. I don't. But would they just let Nick Cage go full Nick Cage on that? Did he have enough power in Hollywood? But then I think so. That was kind of his heyday, the late '90s. So yeah, that could have been interesting. Fuck. Also, Burton wanted to make sure that no one would be able to tell that Superman and Clark Kent were the same person, which meant one thing: super mullets. Burton didn't make one good decision, which is to realize that Smith's script was fucking absolute shit and needed to be rewritten. And the man they brought in to do the job was Wesley Strict. And after reading Smith's script, he compared it to a Golden Age Simpsons episode, the one where Mr. Burns tries to block out the sun. And yeah, like I said, it was a big mistake having Kevin Smith come in and write it. Yeah, that guy kind of sucks now. I guess this is in the late '90s though, but I guess he's just really good at fucking dick jokes. But yeah, eventually Warner Brothers had spent over $30 million on the project, and they still hadn't really finished the script. So Burton moved on to another project, and Warner Brothers just decided to scrap the thing completely. And they still kind of do the same thing today. Like, they're actually on the verge of going bankrupt. These new superhero movies don't work out. It would suck if they lost them, because then they'd all be separated, and you never get to see like Superman, Batman potentially in movies again, because God knows who they get sold off to. If they didn't get sold off to the same place, they wouldn't be able to be in movies and shit together. So that would kind of suck. But yeah, that's all that for this week, I suppose. And yeah, like I said, I'm up on YouTube. I'm up on Podbean, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. And I can put them up on other places too if I get requests for it. But yeah, and I guess I was just going to say thanks.